Well, hello, all of my students. I hope you're having a fantastic day and welcome to another English lesson here on the channel. My name is Jay, and I have the privilege of helping you to improve your English comprehension, vocabulary, and your English fluency. Now, if this is your first time on the channel, I do that through the reading of stories. Today, I have an intermediate level English through story lesson. And it's quite funny as well as relatable. So I hope you're ready for a little bit of learning and laughter. The way I teach, I read and explain key vocabulary words and phrases, and then I read through the story at a faster pace. Be sure to check out some of the links in the description. Also, I have today's story in the description that you can read along with now or at a later time to study. Also, be sure to check out my Parlay with Jay channel where I have fun stories that I read to help improve your English listening skills. And at the end of today's lesson, I do have a quiz. So, with all of that being said, let's dive into today's lesson. Ellen was a grandmother who loved to spoil her grandkids. And let me say that this will not be a read and repeat lesson. I'll read through it gradually and explain words to you. So when a person spoils a child, they pretty much do whatever the child desires to do. Everything is pleasurable, and grandparents are known for spoiling their children or their grandchildren. Okay, let's continue. She would buy them expensive toys, take them out for ice cream, and let them stay up late watching movies. Most grandkids love their grandparents because for some reason, grandparents let their grandkids have the greatest of times. It's almost like a vacation when you go to your grandparents' house. I was talking to a friend of mine who I haven't spoke to since the pandemic, and she's a new grandparent. She has 2 grandkids now, and I asked her, I said, "Are you spoiling them?" She said, "Yes." They are having a great time being grandparents. And I thought about my grandparents, and they spoiled me. And I'll talk more about that throughout today's story. But notice, Ellen spoiled her grandkids. Okay, she bought them expensive toys, took them out for ice cream, and let them stay up past their bedtime to watch movies. Her daughter, Kima, did not appreciate this. Kima believed that Ellen's spoiling was making the kids too dependent and demanding. Okay. Now, one more thing about spoil, it can be used in a couple of ways. So a grandparent can spoil their grandkids, but you can use spoil in another way by saying the food is spoiled. Okay, so it's no good. It needs to be thrown out. So you might say the milk is spoiled, or don't eat that fish, it is spoiled. How long has this been in the refrigerator? It has a funny smell, you might say. And I may reply, just throw it away. It's probably spoiled. So spoiled can be used in a relationship, or it can be used to describe the state of a piece of food or something else. Okay. Now, Kima didn't appreciate what her mother was doing. Notice she said it was making her kids too dependent and demanding. So usually when you spoil a child, they get used to it and they expect everyone to treat them that way. And that's just not how life is. And so now you have what we would call a rift between Ellen, the mother, and Kima, the daughter. There's a rift. There's discord. There's a disagreement. Or simply put, now there is a problem. Okay? And so this can be a difficult dynamic in a family when the grandparent wants to spoil the child, but the parent wants to discipline the child. Okay? Let's continue. They often argued about it, leading to frequent tension. There's a great word to describe the problem. Tension in the house. Tension, stress. Okay. Sometimes you might describe it as heaviness. And in English, we say, oh, the tension is thick in here. You can cut it with a knife. So that's letting you know every time that Kima and her mother, Ellen, were in the same room, you could feel the disagreement. Okay. Kima decided to talk to her father, Kenny, hoping he would influence Ellen to stop. Okay. Influence. So Kima went to her dad, and most daughters are their father's favorite. And so she probably thought that she could persuade her father to do what she wanted. So she wanted to influence her father, whose name was Kenny. Let's find out what happened. However, Kenny loved spoiling the grandkids as much as Ellen did. Uh-oh. He believed that being a grandparent meant showering the kids with love and treats. Okay. What do you think about Kenny's response? Do you think that what he said to his daughter is how it should be? It's okay for grandparents to shower their grandkids with love and treats, or to do like Kima, to spoil them. You know, I think it should be a balance. One advantage that grandparents have, in my opinion, is that they can help reinforce good standards that the parents set, because the grandkids love their grandparents. So it's, wow, I'm not a grandparent, but I talk to grandparents pretty often, and it can get a little stressful. I have a friend of mine. We're about the same age. He's probably 3 or 4 years older than me. And he tells me, he says, hey, it's a different level when your kids have kids and you become grandparents. He says, man, especially when your kids don't do how you've taught them, and then they turn around and teach it to their kids. And then when their kids come over your house, you have to try to work around that. So he said it's a different dynamic, or it's a different structure to the family. So being a grandparent is something I can only imagine how it is. Okay, I'm not a grandparent, but I am a parent. Okay, so remember, Kenny loved spoiling the grandkids. Let's continue. Kima felt frustrated or frustrated. Sometimes we don't sound the R in frustrated. We just say frustrated, but it's actually frustrated. FR, like fresh or front, or words such as that with FR. Okay? Frustrated. And alone in her stance. Okay? Her stance. So a person's stance can be literally how they stand. Okay? Your stance tells me that you are bored, or the way your stance is, you look sleepy. Okay? So how a person literally stands, but a stance can also be my belief. Okay, what is your stance on President Trump? Okay, what is your stance on President Biden? What is your stance on eating food after 8 o'clock? Okay, what is your belief? What is your opinion, your stance? Despite Kima's efforts, Ellen continued her ways. So you might say Ellen was stubborn. She had a stubborn stance. She would not change. She continued in her ways. We describe that as a person that is stuck in their ways. Okay, so you might say, my grandmother, I love her, but she's stuck in her ways. Okay. She bought the kids a new video game console. Wow. Much to their delight. See, that's difficult because the parent may want the child to read, but then the grandmother goes and buys them a gaming system. Oh, wow. She took them to a theme park and let them go on all the rides they wanted. Ellen even baked their favorite cookies whenever they visited. So this makes me think of my grandmother on my mother's side. So my mother is a health nut. Okay, so a health nut is someone who takes pride in eating healthy. I mean, I remember when I was a child, we ate rice cakes. My mother gave us rice cakes instead of like sweets and candy. She would buy us rice cakes and say, put some peanut butter on it. When we got ice cream, she wanted us to have frequent bowel movements. So she would put bran, so we would have fiber in our stomach, so we would go to the bathroom. I mean, she meant well, but she was a health nut. Okay. Instead of buying candy, she would buy us trail mix, and she would buy pumpkin seeds. I mean, just all kind of stuff, which I appreciate now. But when you're a kid, you want to eat whatever you want. And so when we would go over her mother's house, my grandmother, one thing that she did when we would stay with her for the weekend, she would take us grocery shopping, and she had a tradition with me and my siblings. She would let us buy whatever cereal we wanted. My mother would make sure we ate the boring cereals like Raisin Bran and Cheerios, stuff that was supposed to be good for you. There was a cereal back in the day called Grape Nuts. Oh, it was disgusting. But my grandmother said, whatever cereal you want. Oh, we would get Frosted Flakes, Fruit Loops. We would get whatever we want. And that's what a grandparent does. It's almost like they allow you to break the rules just for a little while. For Ellen, spoiling her grandkids was a joy and a privilege. She loved seeing their happy faces and hearing their laughter. Let's read that sentence again. She loved seeing their happy faces and hearing their laughter. Ellen tried to explain to Kima that being a grandmother was a special role. And I agree. She wanted to create happy memories with her grandkids. Kima, not being a grandmother yet, couldn't fully understand. Ellen knew that one day Kima would realize the special bond between grandparents and grandkids. And I tell you, there is a special bond between grandkids and their grandparents. All of my grandparents have passed on. So those memories that I have of them, I cherish. I had some great memories of my grandparents. So I know that I have grandparents that watch the channel, and I would say, hey, continue to make those memories with your grandkids. And I hope you share some of those memories later on when we get to the quiz. So now let's read through the story. Now that I have explained it and gone through key vocabulary words and phrases, let's read through the story at a faster pace without stopping. Are you ready? You can follow along on the screen or read the story in the comments section. Ellen was a grandmother who loved to spoil her grandkids. She would buy them expensive toys, take them out for ice cream, and let them stay up late watching movies. Her granddaughter, Kima, did not appreciate this. Kima believed that Ellen's spoiling was making the kids too dependent and demanding. They often argued about it, leading to frequent tension in the house. Kima decided to talk to her father, Kenny, hoping he would influence Ellen to stop. However, Kenny loved spoiling the grandkids as much as Ellen did. He believed that being a grandparent meant showering the kids with love and treats. Kima felt frustrated and alone in her stance. Despite Kima's efforts, Ellen continued her ways. She bought the kids a new video game console, much to their delight. She took them to the theme park or took them to a theme park and let them go on all the rides they wanted. Ellen even baked their favorite cookies whenever they visited. For Ellen, spoiling her grandkids was a joy and a privilege. She loved seeing their happy faces and hearing their laughter. Ellen tried to explain to Kima that being a grandmother was a special role. She wanted to create happy memories for her grandkids. Kima, not being a grandmother yet, couldn't fully understand. Ellen knew that one day Kima would realize the special bond between grandparents and grandkids. Wow. While I was reading, I actually thought about how my grandparents did the same thing. They were in Virginia, and when we went to visit them, my grandfather would drive us to Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, Virginia, as well as there was another park still there called Old Dominion or King's Dominion. Yeah, King's Dominion. And man, we would go to these amusement parks and ride the rides. My grandmother wouldn't ride, but my grandfather would sometimes, and we would just have a great time. Wow, this takes me back, and I miss my grandparents. Okay, let's get into a few quiz questions to test your comprehension. Number 1, answer these down in the comments section. Why does Kima disagree with Ellen's approach to spoiling her grandchildren? Why does she disagree? Number 2, describe specific ways in which Ellen spoils her grandchildren. So what were some of the examples that I gave in the story? And number 3, a personal question. Do you spoil your grandchildren, or do your grandparents spoil you? So let me know just a little bit about what goes on in your life. If you're a grandchild or you're an adult by now, do you remember your grandparents spoiling you? How did they do it? And if you are a grandparent, do you spoil your kids? How do you do it? Let's give some others some ideas, as well as sharing your experiences. Okay, I hope you have enjoyed today's story and lesson. And if you're like me, you're in no hurry to be a grandparent, but you remember what it was like being a grandchild, and you hold on to those memories. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with me. Don't forget to check out my Parlay with Jay channel. You can scan the QR code or follow the link in the description. And if today's lesson has helped you, make sure you share it with a friend, whether it be on WhatsApp or you text it to them or you email them the link. Help them to improve their English with my style of teaching. Okay, I hope you join me on my next English lesson. Enjoy your day, and I hope to see you then.